Welcome to Conversations from the Barn at Everwood Farmstead. These are casual chats with visiting artists. Creaky barn, bugs, and all. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Conversations from the Barn. This is Chris Everett and Bill Underwood. And today we are really excited to be in conversation with Allegra Lockstadt, who is with us on retreat. And it is midweek on a Wednesday. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
It's a steamy Wednesday. You might be able to hear the sweat fall, sweat dripping down our forehead. But
I did have a morning that was full of a lot of like sweat bees going around, which was fine.
Sweat beads or bees?
Bees. Like the ones that they mostly eat off of nectar and flowers, but they also attract to human sweat because there's salt and water to it.
Yeah.
And since it was so hot, I had a cup of water and they were all flying into the water, and I had to be like, you guys do you.
You do you, but maybe somewhere else.
Yeah. There was a few okay, you'll do that over there. I'll do this over here. I'll put my brush in sometimes and try to cohabitate.
You had a little ecosystem.
I did, yeah. And I had to just be trusting it. The other thing that was really cool about this morning, which Bill saw, but I don't think you saw, was there was a bee.
A swarm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
this is by the
calving barn.
Calving barn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love, so we haven't really had that moment yet this season. Last season, Siri Unlin was the first one here, and no kidding, within an hour of her getting here, a doe laid down in the field to basically have its baby right there. And we were all standing there watching it. And Siri was like, I've been here 30 minutes. This is crazy. And so we haven't really had that boom moment yet this season. And today it happened. Oh. Adam texted Allegra and was like, there's something you need to see. And it was a 20, 30 foot tall tower of bees that was not circling, but kind of hanging out by the calving barn and just waiting to find. There is an existing established hive, if you will, within the wall of the barn, and it was it was something to see.
It was amazing.
I'm glad you got a chance to experience it, and you were unafraid. You were right there.
Well, yeah, I think it helped though, because you, Lisa, and Adam were there. I was like, seems fine. Seems okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was amazing. I feel so grateful too, knowing too. I don't know if that's normal every day. This happens at 4. Just
It's at 4.
It's a happy hour swarm.
Yeah, pretty much. I wasn't sure, but then as soon as Adam was saying that this hasn't happened before, and Lisa said she's only seen it one other time since being here, and it was really great timing because I was kind of hitting that midweek, I want things to be a certain way with this experience, and sort of trying to mentally plan out how to get the most of it. And I was kind of getting a little stuck, both in what did I want to do next, what was kind of speaking to you and calling you, and then a little bit of body just stiffness from painting and standing for so long yesterday.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was it was perfect because I was just sort of I don't know what to do, and then that was an instant now I know what to do.
It's
which
instant
is just,
distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only seen that. That's the second time in 10 years that I've seen it on the property.
Yeah. It was amazing. The sky and parts of the barn just looked static, on an old television screen. It's insane. And then Lisa opened up the door. I don't know if you got to do this too, and went inside that building. We both got to listen.
Yeah.
On the wall.
And you could hear it. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was very good. It was just 5 minutes ago I was having a tough time trying to figure out stuff, and I was nope, not a problem anymore. Biggest
Yeah.
problem I have is making sure I can hear these bees.
Little did you know that behind the scenes, I was like, Adam, she looks frustrated. Cue the bees. Cue the bees. Stat. Go now.
Release the bees.
At 4 p.m. every day.
Yes.
Wait
Just
till-
on Wednesday.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, wait
Yeah.
till you see the swans tomorrow. It's going to be amazing.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Well, we should give some context. Allegra is a painter, and she's been painting plein air, which has been so fun this week. And you've been hyper productive, I have to say, because every time I step outside with the poodles, you're in a different location with a whole new gorgeous painting, kind of just weaving around the property, finding your little corners, and what's really cool and excited the committee is that you're exploring nighttime plein air painting. And you gave it a shot last night. It was a dark night, but it was also a really wet night. So it sounds like maybe there were a couple of new things to discover along the way.
Yeah.
But to talk about what your experience has been this week.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's like so many ways into it. I think that, like, for me, and I think this is probably true of every artist who works or every human, like, you have to have a job and you have to, like, career and all of that. And I sort of feel your practice, like, is this is Elizabeth Gilbert language, like I borrowed it from her, but it's like a hobby. You don't need to make money off of it. It's just, you're not part of the machine. It's just something you do for enjoyment. Job, like, we live in a commercial society. You have to have that career, something you're willing to kind of grind out and, like, do more of and put in the extra time. And then vocation, and I love her language, is so beautiful. It's like, she talks about writing as her thing that's like, I will do this before people care, after people stop caring. It's part of who I am. And she has talked about it as like writing is the handprint that I put on the wall of my life to prove that I was here, and it's who I am. And I kind of was thinking about that, like with vocation, how it's kind of like these touchstones that come in through life. And it's like, okay, like, I lifted off at this residency experience I had 2 years ago, which was plein air in Idaho, and just like thinking about that experience, and it was so immersive, and it was a week long, kind of similar, had more guidance to it. And it was just kind of was like, I touched down there, had to lift back up, go back into career job land, and then touch back down and keep okay. So, like, no, it's okay. I'm like, I had to, like, keep touching back down, and it sort of feels like you just pick up where you left off. And it makes me think of, too, like, we had a conversation yesterday, Chris, about, like, remembering and forgetting, and, like, it's sort of the practice of, like, I think you're constantly in the remembering when you're making, and, like, there's stuff that was, like, I was starting to do while painting and capturing light, where I was like, oh yeah, I remember how this felt at one point. So it feels like a continuation of that. Yeah, and then, like, it also feels like there's just, like, more of an opening for other things, like stream of conscious painting and just being in the moment. And it's like, I find that things sneak in while I'm trying to, like, sort of capture light or movement or energy or essence of something. And it's like, I'll be sort of like, what is going on with this leaf? I don't understand what's happening here. And then, like, all of a sudden, like, something, like, from life sneaks in and it, like, signals you too of, like, oh, like, this is a different touchstone that I needed. And something that I've kind of felt a lot in this week is just kind of like room for grieving and processing.
Breathing or grieving?
Grieving, but
Grieving,
both, yeah. Yeah, like, I think from, like, the last year with COVID, because everybody, like, we kind of lost a year. It's like we lived, but not as much. And then, like, in Minneapolis, just, like, community grieving with, like, George Floyd and Dante Wright and Winston Smith. Just, like, I feel like there's just this, like, grieving that's happening, and there's different spaces for it, and I'm still learning how to community grieve. Like, I feel that grief in a certain way but then I don't know, I'm not healing in the same way that I see other peers healing, which is okay. Everybody heals differently. But like, for instance, like I lived close to George Floyd Square, and I like felt fine going to the square, but it wasn't like a space for me to heal. And I don't think that was appropriate either. I think it was more about spaces for like, just like community healing, but I didn't heal in that way. So kind of thinking of that, and like, and then I had like a COVID loss in my family in January. And like, I just like realized like knew then I didn't give myself space really to grieve. And it was so weird because it was like I went to a Zoom funeral and like that happened. And then like 2 hours later I had to go to a meeting, and it was just like, this is weird, still in my apartment, but like the spaces like are just so compartmentalized. And I sort of feel like just having like space and like sort of not structured, goal-oriented thinking of just like trying to like experience like landscape or light or painting, that I was able to kind of like little things could sneak in, like grieving and like permission to grieve and like space to let it unfold. And then I would get distracted in the painting and be like, oh, like I should paint this, and then just go away and come back and go away. And it gets me thinking about grief. Like something I read this year is kind of thinking about it as like a ball in a box, where like when the event that you're grieving first happens, like the ball is like taking up the entire box, and there's like a button that's like just pressing onto, and that's kind of like grief activated, like we are grieving, and then kind of gets smaller over time, like this ball, and it will still sometimes hit the switch maybe like a week later, but then maybe years later, like when the ball is still so small, like sometimes it just like goes around the box and then hits the switch out of nowhere, and you're like, wow, all of a sudden I'm thinking about that, and I'm like at the grocery store shopping, and that's not what I intended, but it's just that bouncing around. So that's like stuff I've been thinking about, and like just having like gratitude and space for that, and then having like the artwork and landscape and painting to also be like a conduit to like experience that, to kind of like, I want to say like facilitate or coax it for me, maybe.
It's occurring to me just now. You talked a minute ago about this equation of space and time can kind of help create something new or unexpected. But there's also another piece, which I think is the gift of artists, which is the gift of physicalizing too. To not just be in your head, but to be actively making something. And I have to think writers are the same way, but dancers and painters and sculptors and all the rest of it, that there's a portal in the physicalizing of in some way.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think a portal's a good word for it. Yeah, I think conduit is also good. Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like portal, but then it's also like a body that you can like gravitate around. And kind of going back to that touchstone thing, I just kind of like keep thinking about like a thread from like a long rope that's like just being woven over time, and then this like way of making kind of goes in and out with living life, and it feels like that it's also like there's like a gravitational pull, I think, to it. And I've had like thoughts like while making on this experience of just like I don't know how else to be. Like I really don't. I think I'm a capable person, and I know for a long period of time I was like, ooh, I should do med school, like that's smart. and then like it was just like, I don't think that's what I need to be doing. And I don't know, it's weird. Like I kind of go back to like if you talk about it as like a portal, it's like I don't know how else to interface in the world. I really don't. Whether it's like commercial job stuff, and I'm very lucky and honored to like get to like work with clients in a creative capacity, or like just a way of like processing information and experience. Yeah. Yeah, and just kind of thinking too, like it feels like something that's like macro micro, like it expands, contracts.
Very much. Right.
Yeah, you reacted to that.
Yeah, totally. I get that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the night painting.
Okay.
Because I feel like for most people, myself included, that concept is so foreign. We've all seen night photography, which is very much manipulated light and open shutter, but the idea of a night painting, like talk about that.
Yeah, doesn't it sound like magical and mysterious?
Mysterious, but also just a big unknown, like in terms of, I mean, even like just your light source is obviously this. I mean, we're lucky here, the moon, but also so many stars on a clear night. It can be so bright out here because you can see so many more stars. Mm-hmm. What's your light source? I mean, what are you using?
And not that it really helps, but there were a bunch of fireflies last night.
Well, the fireflies don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a little bit, but didn't get to do a little dot. Yeah, so I'll sort of like give a little bit of lineage to how I learned of it. So I worked on my last residency. There was another artist there, Kieran Brennan. He has a middle name I can't remember, but if you look up Kieran Brennan paintings, I'm sure it will come up. And he was doing night paintings, and I was like, what's this about? And and so we got to do that with him, and I was there with my friend Jay Rigorshik, so we were able to like work with Kieran and try night painting, and it was like kind of like last night of the residency, so it was like, oh, like we just started something and then had to like leave and come back to it 2 years later here. But like for us, what we did then was just kind of like you just sort of observe what's there and kind of using like a headlamp to paint. And like Kieran's setup was great. He had like an easel and he had oil, so there's like less of a drying issue. It kind of just stays wet. And he had like a easel with a palette and then headlamp, and just kind of you paint what's there. And I feel like seeing that was sort of like this like little like, let me dog ear the page and come back. And that's what I wanted to explore here. So I kind of build off of that and sort of figure it out in the process. Last night was my first like, let's see how this goes, baby steps. And I had like a headlamp, which I bought, and I set up some flashlights that you all had provided. Thank you. Like the funny retro.
Yes.
Oh, right, yeah.
They're really cool. And like I put them on the stairwell that's kind of next to the artist loft.
Okay.
And I had them pointed at the trees, so the tree was catching the light. And then I had another flashlight underneath that was kind of cooler, brighter light shining up. So you get like a composition that's just different and activating the space.
Sure.
So that's kind of what I set up, and then like you set up the actual paint surface and kind of your easel, and then pretty much like I think for any artist the hardest thing is just getting started. And every time I like start any sort of endeavor, I'm like, well, guess I'm doing this, is like kind of like what goes through my head. So I tried that out, and it's like, well, guess I'm doing this, and I didn't last for very long. It was like too wet at the time. I don't think I would have the same issue tonight. So what I ended up doing was I actually like walked around your property and like figured out compositions for other nights. And I bet what will maybe happen, I don't want to say like this has to happen, but I'll try it again, and it'll probably be sort of material that I will generate and then maybe pull back to the studio and revisit and rehone.
Very cool. I can't wait to see it, an example of it.
Me too. I don't know.
Because you truly never, I mean, other than your experience with
Yeah.
this artist, that you've never really attempted it before.
Not really. I mean, I've tried at my apartment, but very small scale, and like I didn't really have it like set up in a way that was like the thing I always think of. Have you watched Portlandia?
Yes.
Okay, you know, like that bit that's like get the gear and like yeah, that's what I didn't have the gear, and I feel like now that's like, oh, get the gear, you can just go do it. It
Yeah.
feels more like it can happen. Yeah, but usually like my making process is like when it's not plein air, it's very much I'm just like looking at a flat computer screen, and yeah, it's just like a lot of difference. I think I'm doing this process of plein air of just responding to what's happening. And like last night, it was just like, okay, I'll just do this, see what happens, and then kind of build on it for the rest of the week.
And so to prep for it, I think you were out painting just a canvas black, right?
Yeah.
To prep for the.
So I was learning from last night today, because like the painting I did make was very streaky because it was so thin from last night. With the like it wasn't drying, so the paint was just streaking. You could see the canvas.
Okay.
So then today I was like, gonna paint that canvas black
Yes.
and gonna not have that problem, and like less like time spent building up the painting. Yeah.
We're excited to see what happens.
Yeah.
Me too. I don't know. Yeah, I have some thoughts of what I'll try tonight or tomorrow night. We'll see.
Just get the gear and get it done.
Yeah, get the gear.
Get the
Get
gear.
the gear.
Yeah.
We usually wrap our podcast with a simple question,
Okay.
which is, how have you experienced beauty today?
I think having space and gratitude, I feel like that answer is very like, do you go to Hallmark and, and get that? But like, I think there is some of that, and it kind of builds up from yesterday too, like, and like kind of this like both community grieving and personal grieving. And when I say community grieving too, I'm trying really hard, like I don't know the right language for that, to like grieve everybody who's had like a death by like a cop killing, especially like Black and brown people. Like I don't have the right language, but like I feel like some of that came up last night with just like sort of, I was like coming into this barn and like opening it and just like doing whatever because you can and you should. And I was thinking about like Ahmed Aubrey, who's like the young man who was gunned down, I think in Atlanta.
Georgia, yeah.
In Georgia, yeah. Like I was thinking about, like, I know before that happened, like he was like out on a run and then just like came up to a construction site and just was like walking around and exploring it and just kind of thinking about like, yeah, everybody's done that, and like just like, oh, this is a cool thing, I'll like look at it. And for him it's just like, wow, that was like the last thing, like he had an experience that was maybe like this, of just like exploring a space, and it's like the last thing he got to do before just being gunned down. And I was just like thinking a lot about that last night and today, of just like, you know, I'm grateful that I get to be alive, and like not in comparison to him, like, or privilege or anything of that, but just kind of grateful to like have the experience to like that grief come in. Like that was like the ball hitting the switch just out of nowhere. Like I think that like sometimes I'll have that with like other people from this year, and it's kind of like I can't imagine the loss. Like with Dante Wright, like I think I was looking at somebody's age, like reading something, and they're like age 20, and then out of nowhere it's just like, oh, like he was like 20 or 21. Yeah, which I just like, I feel like grateful to have that space and to process differently, because I think too, like when I think of spaces for processing and grieving in the cities, in Minneapolis and George Floyd Square, it's like I don't want to center my experience like as a white person in those spaces. It doesn't feel appropriate. I think that should be like a space where it's like listening, because we have to right now. Like that's like what this is. So I feel grateful for that. And I feel, I feel just like moved to get the chance to learn. And then I think it's obvious that it shouldn't come at the cost of somebody being murdered. So all of that's happening. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it's a beautiful answer.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sure you got that from Hallmark.
No.
No. That one was just like, for me, it just like happened. And yeah, it's just like very different to experience that. And like, I'm saying this all very tentatively because like, I think we collectively should be grieving, but I want to also make sure that like, there's space for Black and brown people to grieve, and that I'm not centering the experience that I have to it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think like having like this space kind of like was like, oh, there's like a different sort of grieving space. And then same too with just like personal loss. Like I think I didn't like give myself permission to feel that. And I think like that's the beauty I'm feeling, and like sort of like literal space and literal time, and then just experience to like be vulnerable and let things come in. Because like most of the time the actual work I'm doing is just like look at a plant, paint the plant, like look at the light changing on the plant, what's happening in the plant, and then like it just like that's like very like I don't need to get this thing to a client. Like it's not like high stakes. It's so like just paint the plant, have a nice time, and like things can just like unfold. Yeah.
Well, normally we have this conversation at the end of the week, and there's always like a bit of a sadness for the artist because they know they're leaving tomorrow. But in this case, not. We're midweek, so enjoy the rest of your week. And
thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very, very honored, and I'm not paid to say this, but I just have to say it's just been such a thoughtful and wonderful experience. I feel like there's just like so many thoughtful touches that I kind of experience just from like waking up, and it feels so great, and I just feel so privileged to be here. And the thing that I've also loved too is like getting to like have like touchstones of getting to talk with both of you, and then Lisa and Adam, just on and off. And it could be just very casual, like, oh, nice day, or like something like that.
Nice swarm.
Yeah.
Nice bee swarm.
Good bee swarm. But then getting to like be involved with that, and then like having things unfold, it's just been like really delightful and really great. Like I know this is like a solitary artist retreat, which I really like, but like I think it feels very community and cohort, but I don't need to prove anything to anybody. It's just like, you're here, we're here. It's good. Yeah.
It makes us really happy that you're finding what you need this week.
Thank you. Yeah.
And thank you for saying yes.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think like I'm constantly figuring out what I'm finding here, which is really nice.
Good.
And really rare.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Conversations from the Barn at Everwood Farmstead. Our theme music is provided by John Mark Nelson. Wishing you all good health.